Hi, Carl. It's great honor for me to have you in ERP Talks podcast.
Well, you're too kind. I've been, waiting for a number of months to do this because I was, going through some changes myself, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you today for sure.
Thank you so much and good luck for all the steps that you took in your career. So let's start with the first typical question, which is tell us more about your career journey. You are an ERP veteran. You have been in this market so long, and I want to know how did you start this career? How you get involved in the ERP industry? I want to know everything, and also the Vision 33, 20 years, everything.
Well, some people would say that I've been doing it long enough that I'm an ERP survivor, and I'm sure some of that's true. The interesting thing, is in when I first got into the whole consulting line of work, you didn't, kind of go to college and become a consultant, right?
Yeah,
Most everybody came to consulting from something else. So I'll tell you how I got there. I
yeah.
actually started out at about 19 years of age, and I was a minister, right? So I was a minister of churches around the United States. I went
Okay.
to divinity school and did that whole educational process, and I spent about it felt like a decade as a pastor of a church, right, one place or another, and that taught me a lot of things, right, that lasted with me through my whole career. The aspect of public speaking and being in front of an audience, I was never afraid of that because I'd had that
Okay.
experience to grow with. Meeting people, right, talking to them about their challenges, all of that was kind of part of that career, and
Yeah.
so it transitioned with me. I left that to join a Christian not-for-profit organization where I organized really large events, public events of like 20,000 people a night for 7 nights in a row. And it would take me a year. I used to move to a community, work with a lot of agencies, churches, and others, and then we would put this large event on. So that taught me another piece of how to do certain things. And it was at that point in my life that I first used a computer, that I first started capturing data about all the hundreds of thousands of volunteers, and all of the donations, receipts, and things like that were all done on a computer.
Okay.
And one wasn't enough. So we put our very first little 4 computer network together, right, in the office. And that was the first time I realized that I was actually good at something besides what I'd been doing, that there
Yeah.
was this whole other part of my persona that I had never gotten to touch base with before. And so that became kind of a hallmark for me every place that I went, that I was an early adopter of technology. And so I was able to move it places. I stayed in Christian not for profit. I worked in 2 organizations. That took me about a decade. And a friend on the board of directors of the last one, which was a kind of a relief agency of sorts, and did development work, we call it, all around the world. He was on the board of directors, owned his own business, and said, I think I've got something you would really enjoy. And it was kind of a marketing and sales position. And so I left there and took all these skills about marketing and uh, direct mail campaigns and things like that I learned, and took it to that business where I stayed for a while, and then I got a promotion to another company. So I was in the oil distributorship business for about 10 years, and that's when I really made the jump into the world of technology. It was after that, because it just you kind of run out of room sometimes, right? In one
Yeah.
line of work. And so I joined my first technology company, which was a company that sold. Some people will remember it. Goldmine CRM was their primary product, but lo and behold, they also had this ERP product they sold called ACPAC, and ACPAC came out of Canada, and it was in most people knew it as a DOS, right? The old DOS system,
Okay.
and they had transitioned it to a Windows version. Was when I first, I think it was around Windows 3.1, something like that it ran on. So it was still a long
Yeah.
time ago, right? And
Yeah.
it was later purchased by Sage, and my memory on Sage products, because I didn't work with them, I think it became Sage 300, right? Something like that.
Oh,
Now, that
yeah.
was my very first experience with ERP. So let me tell you what the first meeting with. I was in sales at the time, and I invited a couple of consultants to go with me because I knew nothing about the ERP product. And they started talking about chains and whips, and I was pretty much sure I was in the wrong place. And so I got a lot of education at lunch after that meeting about, all types of, things that were bombs and work in process and bills of
Okay.
material and production orders. And so I started learning at that point in time about ERP. While I was At that company, which the name of that company was Thought Velocity, one of my customers was a man by the name of Forrest Cook, who owned Omega Business Solutions. And I first went to work for Forrest to do Microsoft CRM because I'd been doing Goldmine CRM, and it was a kind of a natural progression. But he added to our portfolio. He also did Great Plains and Solomon, two products that later became purchased by Microsoft, right? And so we had customers on two different ERP systems. And he just sort of recognized that those were short lived. And so he added in 2003 SAP Business One. He had previously worked with Navision, and the instant that he saw SAP Business One, he liked it because it reminded him of Navision, that you could modify and change, but it had these wonderful advantages that the modifications and the changes you made upgraded easily. Right?
Okay.
That was one of the big things about SAP Business One coming into the marketplace, is that upgrades were pretty easy to do compared with past life, right? If you change something in another program back then, you had to basically recreate all of it in the new version, right? Because it just didn't have
Okay.
the ability to
Mm.
upgrade. So, at least not smoothly. We started doing that. I was with Forrest for about 7 years. He was really my mentor, if I look back on it, like a big brother, and we were very close. He and his brother were the owners of the business, and many people, even in the early days of the SAP Business One channel, thought I was an owner at Omega. We all had silver hair. We all looked like we, just were that close. We would
Yeah.
we would sit on an airplane, and the flight attendant would say, "Are you guys brothers?" And I would just answer yes, right? And because we spent a lot of time together. The But I learned all about ERP. I was really kind of our operations manager at the time, running teams that did Great Plains and teams that did Solomon and teams that did SAP Business One. We acquired about 70 Business One customers over a roughly 5 to 6 year period of time. And Forrest decided he wanted out of the business. So he and Michael, his brother Michael, they basically gave me the company one day at lunch, right? And just said, "We just want you to take what we have and keep going. You do with it what you want. You've earned it, right?" Now, the thing is, I've been an owner once before. This time, I tried owning my own company, and I knew that I wasn't good at it, right? So I kind of thought for a couple of days, and then I called Alex Rooney at Vision 33, and I arranged for Omega to be acquired by Vision 33. And
Oh
myself and a
my God.
handful of employees went to work for Vision 33, and that lasted me 15 years. So that's a good run, and no matter how you look at it.
Oh
So
my
that's
God.
that's kind of the journey that I went on, and then of course I left Vision 33. The basically the end of last year, and I joined Stellar One in
Yeah.
spring of this year. So that's the overall journey and how I got where I am today.
This is amazing. This is amazing, and it's an
I
honor for me to sit with you.
I still believe what has made me good in this ERP space were the things I did earlier in my life, because the technology that I used there was always in the context of that's what this kind of business needs, right? And I got to experience two or three different things that really showed me the power of technology and how it can transform a company and how it can make big problems turn into really small problems. And so I was just a believer in it from the outset because it felt like magic to me, right? That things could become so organized, so structured. Where before you were searching for things in those days in a file cabinet, all of a sudden it was just digitized and available very quickly. I remember thinking to myself that I could take all 10 filing cabinets in my office and they would all fit on a floppy disk, right? Everything that was in them. It was revolutionary to be able to
Yeah.
do that. And that's always made me a believer, right? Because if you were there in those beginnings, you know how much of a new paradigm it was.
Yeah.
So things like, the cloud adoption are just like that, right? They have that it's a whole new day kind of feel about them.
Yeah. This is interesting. And also, you mentioned that you are doing like a kind of speeches and you're dealing with people, which is important skills for anyone will work in the ERP industry. It's not only the technical things, but there is a human side. You should interact with people, start conversations, be a human. So, yeah, this is awesome. So, Vision 33, you worked for them too long, then you finally now in Stellar One. So I know that Vision 33 and like Cider, uh, Sapphire. I don't know. There is a big names. There's big sharks in the ERP
Yeah.
industry. So how do you feel this change from a very big company to like a smaller one?
Well, I think, I mentioned my experience with Omega. That was smaller. That were probably, I want to say, 17 to 20 employees at the
Yeah,
time. And so definitely on the smaller side. But we didn't feel that small, right?
yeah,
Because we were really busy. We were selling routinely. There wasn't, um, we didn't know we were small. And even when I first joined Vision 33, they were about the same size. So I remember we had about 70 customers and Vision 33 had about 70 customers. So together, that particular acquisition that they did of Omega, that took us to 140 customers. And it's
okay.
about that time in the life of an ERP business where you have to make changes, right?
Mm,
All of a sudden, everybody's not working on everything. You actually have departments and you start getting focus as an employee. So when I was at Omega, I was, operations manager. So I oversaw all the consultants, all the support desk stuff, and anything else they could throw at me. And when I went to work for Vision 33, all of a sudden, initially I was a regional manager for the Pacific Northwest. But about a
okay.
year later, they acquired Apollo in San Francisco, and so they asked me to move out of that role into a general manager role for the the brand new total care support group. So I moved to Southern California to take on that role, coming from the Pacific Northwest. And so the first day there were like two of us, and I think for the first 6 or 7 months there were three of us total in the department. But
Yeah,
before I left last year, there were probably about 30 people worldwide. Now, I
okay.
was no longer involved with them, from a management perspective, because here's how things go. I stayed in kind of the general manager role for several years, but then probably halfway through my about 7 year mark, they asked me to just kind of focus on being their Business One ambassador. Right, that was really the title that I had for a long time. And in that role, I focused on, sort of meetings we had with customers. I did a podcast like you're doing now for 5 years.
Sorry
Yeah.
for interrupting you, but just to let you know, this is one of the most important things that like motivated me to do this podcast. When I saw your podcast, every like single week I can see your episodes. And also to let you know, Mike Taylor mentioned that always that Carl was number one, then I come number two.
Well, it was, it wasn't my idea. It was really a fellow by the name of Dan Kraus really had the idea for the podcast. And I didn't know if I would like it or not, but I ended up having a very good time doing it for sure. And
Yeah,
I did this thing called Wednesday Web Chat. I probably did it, the early years I did it every week, and I got a little burnt out about it, and I started doing it every other week. But I think overall, I know that I did something somewhere close to 500 or 600 Wednesday Web Chats and had
yeah,
over 1 million views on YouTube over that period of time.
yeah,
So yeah, I was inadvertently I was kind of building a personal brand. It wasn't like a plan; it just sort of happened through
yeah.
the years, and then so working Vision 33 became about 500 people, roughly 500 people, right, in round
Mhm.
numbers. And so you have a lot more focus on doing just one or two things. I had always been for many, many years prior to Vision 33 involved at the leadership level, right, the executive team level. For the first time in my career, since I was about 19 years old, I was not doing that at Vision 33. I was down a level or two, right, and it was there were nice things about it, right? You just kind of went to work, did your job, and I still had plenty of recognition and all of that sort of thing. But I always felt like there was something more that I had more to offer at in terms of ideas and strategy and tactics to grow the business. And so that was my only disappointment through all the years that I was there, that I never achieved that. But I never even mentioned it to anybody. I just kept doing my job, right? That's
Mhm.
just the way it was. And I got to meet so many customers. It's one of the things that Vision 33 allowed me to do was organize the ASA, SAP
Yeah,
Business One user group conference. And I really enjoyed doing that and had a great time for the years that it was in occurrence. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of put the brakes on that whole event. ASUG and the partners, never really saw their way back to kind of recreating it after that pandemic season kind of passed through. So it was always a challenge to get more than 500 people there. ASUG's other events have always had, kind of a direct line of communication from ASUG to the customer. When it came to Business One, the ability to grow the conference was really on the partners. And many of the partners didn't want to be a part of something like that. And others just weren't very good at marketing, right, to get their customers there. So it's one of the delights about my experience with Acumatica is their conference is partners and customers at the same place. And I'm really looking forward to having that experience.
We'll come to Acumatica soon.
Yeah.
So SAP Business One, you have been an expert in SAP Business One. How have you seen the product evolve over the past 20 years?
Well, I've never allowed myself to be called an expert, because as soon as you are one, people have amazing expectations of you.
But you are an expert.
Yeah.
You wrote a book in SAP.
Don't tell anybody, but it was 2 books. Yeah. And if you ever have a hard time sleeping, you just pick that up and start reading it, and you'll be out like a light. So yeah, I still have a few memory copies on my bookshelf. What's changed about SAP Business One? Well, when it first came to the marketplace, like I said, it had so much value already. Anyone with vision could see it was a good place to be, and that there was, I think, the possibility of really satisfying customers with the experience that they would have with this ERP application. It fit so well into so many businesses, and it was so easily to adapt it to a particular business and their processes. So that I know Vision 33 sold it to almost every possible kind of business you could imagine. There were very few lines of business that it couldn't be used in at all. So the adaptability was, always there, and just as they added features through the years, it became better and better.
Yeah.
The hard years were up until about, if I remember right, version 2008 or 2007, 2007A. That was problematic up to that point. But as soon as they released version 8, it started to improve really dramatically for a number of years. I would say that in the last 4 years or so that I was associated with the product, there weren't as many additions because there wasn't as much to add to the application. Most of the big blocks had been taken care of, that people had wanted through the years. And now you were really working on quality, things like automations and easier ways to integrate. And so all of that was possible. And, you had so much power with the organization like SAP, to be able to accomplish those things. If I, and it's not a huge weakness in my book, because many of the customers over the last decade or so would take their on-premise systems and move them into a private cloud, type of experience. But SAP Business One itself is not a cloud application, right?
Yeah.
But you can run it in the cloud.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's my differentiation. My good buddy in New Zealand would probably, have other feelings about that, but it's not a native cloud developed piece of software. But that being said, it competed really well against cloud-based systems like NetSuite at that point. So they would regularly win deals, against NetSuite in the sales process and sales cycle. So the product always had a good roadmap, right? It was one of the things that customers really enjoyed, was hearing about what's going to be there in the new version, and seeing those new features and being able to take advantage of them for their businesses. So all of that was handled really well. In prior lives, working with a publisher was difficult. There are some people that would say SAP was difficult, but compared to working with a Microsoft, right, or even working with ACPAC in the early years, we felt like we had a very close personal relationship with the people at SAP. Many of them, some of them, were there for the whole time. Very few, but some of them. Right? There were a lot of people that moved on. I think that was one of the hardest things for me personally, because I get to know the people, really get to know the people, and to have some of them come for a few years and then depart and go someplace else, that was difficult because you were trying to build a business, you were trying to build this community, and part of what makes a community stick together is the people that believe in it. And when one of those pieces would move on, it was difficult to replace them exactly. And I built most of those things just on relationships and trust, right, between one person to another. So I think it's almost inevitable as a product has success, people build on that success and they find that they can go someplace else and be happier, right?
Yeah.
So it's part of life.
Yeah. So, do you think that SAP Business One is the ideal solution for small and mid-sized businesses in the US market specifically?
It wasn't created in the U.S., right? So it
Mm,
was got its start in Israel, right? And because of that, it sort of, at least in the very early days, it definitely carried some problems. Things that we did, like like checks, for instance, that just wasn't done over there.
yeah.
So the check writing capabilities were really limited, and it took couple of years for that to get sorted out. Even to this day, I think, we've talked before about things like credit card processing,
Yeah.
right? It's such a normal required part of US business. And to not have that be out of the box is,
Mm,
kind of frustrating.
yeah.
Shipping is another thing, right? You think
Yeah.
of, everybody ships. So those were always some of the frustrations that you had to have add-ons, right? To make
Sure.
that side of your business work. But just like with anything, if you start introducing a third party, the relationship gets harder to manage, and the ability to sort of solve problems is more complicated. So
Mm,
if I ever had any sort of frustrations with the whole fit of, to the US, I would say it was that there were probably a handful of things, maybe 4 or 5 things, that if it was sort of out of the box would resolve a lot of issues. Now, the problem is that other people can move faster than SAP. SAP is great, but they're not quick, right? About anything.
mm,
Everything takes a long time. So other people start creating credit card solutions and this solution and that solution. And so by the time SAP could have accomplished any of those things, there were already choices out there. And now you've got partners who've invested and created these things. So you're not going to create that functionality. You're going to just totally rely on the add-ons and the network that makes them. So, but that always was a challenge, right, in the SAP Business One world, that you ended up with, I would think, the average customer across the SAP Business One geography of the whole world probably has 7 add-ons.
yeah.
And that just kind of complicates the administration of the system, right, for
Yeah.
everybody. But even still, I mean, when I compared it to other systems that were available, it was superior, right?
Mm,
Especially for distribution companies in particular. It was like perfectly targeted, perfectly created for that piece of the economy, to be able to improve itself with that kind of software. So it definitely has its role, and I believe that it'll be around for quite a while yet. But I do think that, if you look at, and it's probably included in that, something like 80% of all systems sold today are kind of cloud based. So you will see fewer and fewer kind of on premises SAP Business One installations. More of them will be private cloud. Some are really going down the public cloud avenue, but that's still proving to be difficult for SAP Business One,
yeah.
because software, it's hard to fit, a square peg in a round hole, right? And
Yeah.
that's a bit of what you're doing when you're trying to put a product like SAP Business One that was designed to be on premises into a cloud environment with multiple companies sharing a space. That's a bit of a challenge. It can be done, but it's not an easy.
So, why do you think SAP are not motivated to make it like a cloud solution or to invest more on SAP Business One? I heard this a lot, that SAP are not motivated to spend more money even in marketing, in the solution development. Why do you think SAP? Do you think that S4 HANA attract all or grab all their attention?
Well, I think it's long been a strategy at SAP that they want to be a cloud company, and they want to sell more cloud-based software
Yeah,
because it makes more money. It
sure.
makes more money. It's a publicly traded company, so that's what their goal is. So if you look at, the business you could drive with an on-premises based system, even cloud hosting it, most of the cloud stuff that's done around Business One is private cloud, and it's owned by partners and their
Yeah,
partners. It's not an SAP Cloud Center driving revenue.
yeah,
So there are business reasons that are just the truth. And if you look at their history, it's not just S4 HANA. It's SAP Business by Design that was a cloud system that never really took flight the way they wanted it to. I think there's been some strategic, it's just my observation, you understand. I don't have
yeah,
any
yeah,
inside information. It's just my observation that they've taken strategic steps with Business by Design to make it not really compete against S4. And what they would really like in the future is to figure out a way to have different versions. Again, this is just my opinion, different versions of S4 that would go downstream as well as upstream. I think it's only a matter of time before they will do that. The Business One will be around for a long time and they'll maintain those customers. But at some point, I see SAP coming to market with at least a downstream version of S4 or a new product, right, built in the cloud.
Okay.
So it's because they're smart guys. They're going to see how well other people are doing in that space, and they would like to have a piece of that. So I think it'll be an interesting a decade. I know these big turns take about a decade in my experience. So 10 years from
Richard
now, I'd be
Duffy, Richard
very
Duffy,
surprised.
Richard Duffy said the same thing. He said it may take like 10 years for SAP uh, to like have like a real web solution or a real cloud solution. It may
Yeah,
take like 10 years.
yep,
So interesting.
yeah.
So you wrote a book for SAP Business One. It's a business user guide published by the SAP Press. So, what is the story of that book?
Well, one of the things I never wanted to do in life was basically write a textbook, right? and and ultimately, it is a textbook. There's a lot of screenshots and a lot of directions. So if SAP Press would have come to me directly about writing one, I probably would have said no.
Yeah,
But they were pointed in my direction by one user who had been extremely supportive of me and the conference and things like that through the years. Joe Lemur is his name. And
yeah,
Joe really said, if you want a book written, the guy that should write it is Carl Lewis. So the fact that it came from a user really encouraged me to do it. But I was very much about doing something that would have value to more than me, more than just my company, other companies, and especially a larger community of users. So I asked several of the other partners to give me another writer. And in the first edition, there were probably 6 or 7 people that actually contributed to the body of work. And in the back of the book, they're all listed with photographs and things like that. And
yeah,
my name goes on the front because that's
yeah,
the way SAP Press wanted to do it. But it was very much a collaborative effort. Now I still had to read everything they submitted, edit everything they submitted so that it would sound like one voice. And there's some guys that was a challenge with. If you've ever met Robert Wakeman, Robert is a very excitable guy. And so when he writes a chapter, he can make sales sound so exciting when you're just talking about software that I actually had to kind of tone down his section a bit, right? And because you want it to kind of come from one singular kind of place. So still had to touch all the pages, but it was really it's one of those accomplishments in life that when you start, you go, what have I gotten myself into? And when you finish it and it's all done and you see it in a hardback on your shelf, you say, I'm really glad I did that. And then when they came to me to write the second version and kind of bring it up to date, because I was trying to remember, the first one was relevant all the way up to version 9.2.
okay,
And then the second one was, I can't even remember anymore what came after 10.0, right? All the way to
yeah,
10.0. And because the first one didn't have anything about HANA or anything like that. So we updated all the screenshots, everything throughout the whole book to be the new interface and all those things. And that was still a lot of work doing that. And we
yeah,
added new chapters. The book format changed because we added more pages, right? But you don't really want it to be a bigger piece of stuff, right? So
yeah,
it doesn't have any more pages, but it's got more material in it. And the key thing about it is you mentioned that it's a user guide. So there's
mhm,
nothing about administration. There's nothing about installing the software. It's all about what a user, an everyday user of the system, would want to know. How do I do
okay,
this?
yeah,
What's step one? What's step two? We're not looking at if you want to do this, you've got to have it set up this way in administration. We're assuming you have it set up right already.
I didn't
And
know that there's a kind of book like that because maybe in the training we can like provide the customer with this book and hey guys, if you have anyone just like worked with you, you can show them this book. It will be beneficial because sometimes the customer also ask us, hey guys, we need more like information. We send them the SAP help, which
yeah,
is SAP Business One help is different. So I believe
yeah,
this. I didn't know that there is like a book for the business users.
yeah. Yeah, it's 800 pages roughly, right? 700 to 800
Oh my
pages.
god.
So pretty much every menu item is gone through in the book in the same order as the menu, right? All the time. The book is in the same order as the Business One menu, and that was purposeful, right, to make it easy to navigate. And
Okay.
so I know there are people still using it. I used to, I'd go visit a customer and they would have it on their desk, right?
Yeah.
Or I'd talk with somebody in a Teams meeting or something, and they would show me the book, right? And so yeah, it's there's been a few thousand copies sold. Nothing, nobody's going to get rich off of it, but it feels good to be of help, right, for sure.
Yeah. So I will make sure next time we have an implementation to give it for our customers as a gift, and tell them the guy who wrote this book is my friend. I did a
Yeah,
podcast with him. So now you are working for Stellar One, who are also an Acumatica partner, not only SAP. And so, in your opinion, when you compare SAP Business One to Acumatica, what do you think about this comparison?
well, a little bit about Stellar. As you mentioned, it's a much smaller company, and at this point, we actually sold off the SAP practice, the SAP Business One practice, in about February. So that sale was accomplished here in early spring. So now they're solely focused on,
I'm sorry. So Stellar One are not doing SAP anymore?
not anymore, not for like the last
Okay.
60 days. There was a transition period, but for like the last 60 days, nope, 100% Acumatica.
Okay.
Stellar One, in that sense, is a startup, right? So
Yeah.
the change is even more dramatic, right? Going from a company of about 500 people to a company, with funding to be a startup, and you know, initially, I think we've hired 4 or 5 people in the last 3 or 4 months. So
Okay.
we kept some of our team. Some of them went to the company we sold the practice to, and then we've added some additional ones. And everybody in the company is learning, right? Everybody's in the learning mode about the software. So even I myself, I've gotten what Acumatica calls badges for
Yeah.
certifications, and to fit, once some of them correspond to the role I have in the company, and Acumatica requires certain badges to be acquired, right, to be a partner. So, but then the way I'm put together, there are certain things I want to know about the ERP. So I want to know about all the ticket tracking capabilities and how that all works. I want to
Yeah.
know all about the CRM stuff and all about the marketing stuff. So I'm very much in a learning mode. The things that I'm not having to learn are sort of the things you bring with you, which is, if you're on the what we call the member success track, right? We're completely a subscription based business. So there's no such thing as here's what the software costs and it'll cost this amount in services, and that's what it's going to take to implement you. We
Yeah.
give the customer one price and they pay that monthly, and that's it, and it's forever,
This
right?
is so smart.
So we don't have to have these discussions with a customer who says, I need a new report. That's just included. There's
Yeah.
no new charges for that. It's all part of the whole subscription piece. And
Yeah.
all of the things that we create for our customers, they go into a collective and we deliver them to all customers, right? Whether
Yeah.
they can use them or not, or if it can become the basis of something that they need. But we share all of that, collective stuff that we've created for all of our members with all the other members.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting, it's definitely a new concept that I credit Richard Seller with, our CEO. Very, very interesting ideas and the way of conducting business. It takes an awful lot of the kind of that frustration between the partner and the customer out of the relationship. And so now there are things that could cost extra. Let's say somebody comes to you and says, I want to integrate my system with WooCommerce.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole network, of course, of integration, call them add-ons or partner solutions that you can deploy for them that will increase their subscription,
Mm.
or you can create one yourself and increase their subscription, which is a lot of what we're doing also. So we're also developing our own, call it, line of products to correspond with Acumatica at the same time. The From a technology standpoint, the differences are, of course, that it is a completely grown in, born in the cloud
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So you're using it in a browser. Their philosophy of there's no users per se. I don't have to buy a new license for every user. I get unlimited users, as many as I need or as many as I don't need. So that goes up and down with your requirements. I can open multiple instances of it, on my machine, and have one section looking here and one section looking there. The technology just kind of works in the browser environment really, really well. Some things I like so much better. The reporting aspects, what they call generic inquiries, are just fabulous to work with and make it really easy for customers to make modifications to those brief little reports on the fly themselves. And just the ability to automate things is far easier than it
Yeah.
would be in Business One. So there's, but at their heart, they're both ERP systems. They both sort of get to the same end results. They both produce financial statements right
Yeah.
at the end of the
Sure.
month, but it's the how they get there, right, is the difference. And so there's some places that are really superior. The marketing capabilities in Acumatica are far superior to what Business One could do.
Mm. Yeah.
And even although there was, sort of a ticketing system, their support stuff, it really wasn't built with a support desk in mind as much as it was almost more suitable for field service in a very rudimentary fashion. So I'd say there are a lot of things that kind of go deeper, right, in Acumatica than Business One does. They have the same components, but they go deeper, and
Yeah.
from a functionality and deliverability perspective. So I'm having a lot of fun
Mm.
with it, and being in the learner's chair again after so many years. I won't be writing a book for a long time.
So also it's built for the US market, which is
It was
I
born
believe.
in Seattle, Washington, right? That's where it
Yeah.
got its beginnings. And there are users in other countries, but their approach to that has been to almost like OEM the system to somebody in another country that will sell it there. And so they'll create a version for that, localization, rather than try to be everything to everyone, like SAP Business One has done. Tell you, in the early years of Business One, that was very difficult because there were actually 3 versions of Business One, depending on what part of the world you were in. And it
Okay.
took several years for them to get that. And I think it was, that's where I want to say, I think it was about 2007 when the big accomplishment was there was just one version of Business One. And it made development and changes much easier because it was all one single code base instead of
Yeah.
3. So yeah, it was really built with the US market in mind. So there's many things that are kind of out of the box. There's also integration projects for things like Shopify or BigCommerce or Salesforce or
Avalara.
things like that. With SAP Business One, there's no out of the box connections for those.
Yeah.
With Acumatica, you just kind of turn on a switch and the integration to Shopify is done,
Yeah.
right? So you just have to, it takes about 30 minutes to configure and the integration is pretty much accomplished.
Yeah.
It depends on what kind of special things you need to do to make Shopify just the way you want to make it. And the same is true for many, there's been like a collection of them that are really native to Acumatica, and there's no additional cost to the customer to use them, right, as well.
Yeah.
So and I think they've really looked at, what are some of these key differentiators that would make us different than our competition. And of course, now the way NetSuite does that is they create their own website, right? So I can't ever remember the name of it, but it's sort of their solution to that. And Acumatica has said, what people really want is kind of to choose their best of breed application and integrate that. So they have, actual, 2 or 3 e-commerce things you can do and 2 or 3 CRM things you can do. And so they've made some of those basic requirements a lot easier to accomplish, which is pretty remarkable that that's out of the box for sure. They do have, as of a couple of years ago, they started talking about different editions of the application.
Yeah.
So you have manufacturing edition, distribution edition, the retail edition, which is really e-commerce, right? A lot of people, when they think retail, think cash register machines, but it's really e-commerce. And they're about to release sometime this year, I think, a professional services edition. Now, that functionality has kind of always been there, but you had to, purchase sort of different modules to sort of collect it together, right? And so now they've done this where they're already collected. And so when you install it, all of them are there already. And so it makes the customer feel like this is for me because I'm a distribution company. I'm going to buy the distribution edition. It's not completely generic. It is about me.
Yeah.
And unless people think of industry solutions as being very vertically oriented, right? I can tell you could find 2 pillow manufacturers and they don't do it the same, right? So no matter how specific you create an ERP system, bring 10 companies in that are in the same industry, they all want something a little different. So it's got to be able to
Sure.
flex, right? No matter
Yeah.
what. So I think there is value, when you're selling it and when you're learning how to deploy it, in order to, some people would say, well, it's just smoke and mirrors. Well, not really, because in order to sell the manufacturing edition, you have to get certified in manufacturing with Acumatica in order to have access to it. So there are some requirements that are very real. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of, yes, it's there's some marketing to it, but there's some reality to it, and I think it makes it much easier to kind of fit the product and the collection of things they will actually need, all in one collection. So if you think about a professional services company, right, they definitely are going to need specific things like
Yeah.
project management, right,
Yeah.
as a part of that. That's not included in the manufacturing edition. That's going to be in the professional services edition, right? So there are some project based manufacturers that might need that, but there's not as many of those, right? So I just find it has a great deal of flexibility. The interface is really nice, easy to use, easy to learn to use. It has a lot of different terminology than Business One. Business One, called them AP invoices. They're AP bills in Acumatica.
Yeah.
So there's nuances, right, that you have to become familiar with. But the basic processes, of quote to cash and things like that are the same. It just might be there could be a little few different steps on the way there that are talked about in a different way.
Yeah, I believe there is two things that I love in SAP Business One, and I wanted to see it in Acumatica. The relationship map for sure in SAP
Hmm.
Business One,
Yes.
and the other
Yep.
thing is the journal entries. When you do like a delivery or like an AR invoice in SAP Business One, you can find the journal entries. You can open it and see everything. In Acumatica, I believe they are working on that. I don't know if they completed that feature or not, but
I
they're
haven't
working on
heard
that.
that. I mean, you can see them, but it's not as easy as it is in Business One
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
But I think some of the nice things you just kind of mentioned them, that yeah, there is the Acumatica community, right,
yeah,
that is really different, because if you've ever used the SAP community stuff, everybody's there from all their products, and it's hard to find the Business One section.
yeah,
Well, Acumatica only has one product, so if you get
yeah,
there, you're in the right place.
yeah,
And there are a lot of people involved. There's a lot of answers out there, and you can, nominate a feature, encourage your friends to vote for it, and all those sorts of things. My first experience at an Acumatica conference, the CEO is on the stage, and he's saying, "So you asked us to do certain things, and we have done it. Here's the list of the things that came from you, and this is what we've done." My experience at an SAP Business One event was SAP saying, "Here's what we've done for you. Don't you like it?" Right? So there's a little bit of a difference there in the flavor of where did these ideas come from.
yeah,
Sometimes we used to wonder, when I was serving on partner advisory council for SAP Business One, it's like, who wanted that? How did we get that?
yeah,
And so we tried to encourage them to talk to us about what was priority, but it was difficult. I think the global nature of it is what made it like that. Being
mm,
mostly focused, in the U.S.,
yeah,
it's
sure,
easy for Acumatica to sort of work with those customers much more closely. I also saw, at the conference, for instance, it included customers, and they were giving awards to customers as well on their main stage. So it was very, and their message wasn't, they weren't worried about saying something in front of customers they shouldn't say. It was just all out there, and so it was a little bit different of an experience in that regard. And it was also Business One. As much as we wanted to make our conference first class, it was still difficult to get the money, to have recruit the sponsorships and everything. I was amazed with the quality and the class of the event. Pretty remarkable.
yeah.
The
In Las
fact that I
Vegas,
mean, SAP has, Las Vegas. SAP has like 70,000 customers globally, and they can't accomplish a conference for Business One users. Acumatica has about 10,000 customers, and they can accomplish a conference.
yeah,
So there's a commitment there to the customer that is higher, right, in some regards. That's what that tells me, and that's just coming from my, it took me forever to get a conference going, and then to be the publisher and be willing to watch it die. That told me something, right?
yeah. There is also the customer bill of rights in Acumatica.
Yes, very
What do
much
you think
so.
about it?
I think it's great because it's what customers want, right? You have a right to expect quality, right?
Yeah,
So, and to have these commitments made. The other thing is, there's a whole customer facing university, right? So training, basically free training, and
yeah,
it's
free.
pretty comprehensive, right? SAP has changed there so many times, and half the time now when a customer goes there, they want them to pay for it, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
in the old days, that used to not be the case, but that changed. And and you had to go through all kinds of hoops to get a customer an S number, so that they didn't have to pay for it. So there's just been some nice things like that to come along, in this Acumatica experience that I think make it a lot easier to have satisfied, customers attached to you. And that's what you want. You want people to be happy and to stay for a long time, especially in a subscription-based business, right?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You don't want any churn. Customers that
And
are well served, they hang
yeah.
around.
And you are not only like the subscription model that you will work with is different, totally different. You are not even letting the customer pay for the implementation fixed amount, or like a retainer 100 hours, guys, the hour for
Yeah,
$200, 300. It's
yeah.
all subscription.
There's no scope creep, right? I mean, we try to get them done very fast. So the typical customer, we have a different deployment model as well. We're also trying we're really replacing the sales cycle by engaging the prospect with consultants as soon as possible. So the consultants are really doing the job of sales. How do they do that? They actually start deploying a whole system, and we'll import into an Acumatica system for them, which takes us about 2 hours to start up. No servers, nothing.
Yeah.
We'll put in all of their master data and then give them a period of time, like 30 days, to evaluate. They've spent no money, they've made no commitment. If they like it, they'll buy it. If they don't, they walk away, and that's okay. But we're trying to totally eliminate that whole salesperson clogging up, the truth, type of a thing, and just show them for real what it really is right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So we call it the risk-free trial. Most of the customers that go through the risk-free trial sign up, right? That's what you're after, so they can genuinely feel themselves in the software. They can see their data in the software. By the time they're ready to start doing demos, we've taught them how to do it themselves. So because we start having them use the mouse, right? And we walk them through everything, how to do this, how to do that. It takes some patience, but they're learning, right? And
Yeah.
they're adopting to the system. So it is a different concept than what I'm used to, where the sales process could take, 3 months, right? And then it would take as much as 9 months, probably on average, to get them live. Our sales process is very short. And are you serious about looking? Okay, here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to put in a risk-free trial for you, right? And start deploying the software as if it was a real implementation. We'll go this far, and then you make your decision.
Okay.
So it's probably 3 months. Our goal is to get people live in 90 days. Because if you've ever done some investigations about NPS scores in the ERP world, implementations that take 90 days or less, the NPS score is really high, really good.
Okay.
If it takes longer than 90 days, that score ends up going down really fast.
Hmm.
So you are trying to hit this sweet spot, right, to have customers that are satisfied and will recommend you, right, to people they know. And
Hmm.
again, a lot of this is, Richard Seller and his strategy and his vision, and we're building on it every day, right? Because you're
Okay.
learning how to make those dreams happen, right? That's so everything you do, from designing your website to your marketing practices to all the consulting that you do, it all has to be extremely structured and well spelled out for both your employees to understand and execute on, and for your customers' expectations to be proper and in alignment.
That's amazing. I love this idea so much. It's Richard idea. The
Yes,
30 days risk free.
yes, that's definitely
Yeah.
his idea.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's awesome. And also the subscription thing is awesome. That makes the so I was in an event in Atlanta, and I meet someone who was like super interested in the ERP. But when we started talking about the pricing, and he was young, he's this new generation who are only doing subscription for everything
Right.
now. So he told me this is too much. Then he asked me, "Are you guys doing subscription?" I never think about subscription and payment for the services, even my
Yeah.
services. I said, "Yeah, the solution can be like the licensing can be subscription based, but you should pay me this amount." He told me this is too much also. Do you have like any financial like company that can finance this project, then we like pay for them a monthly fee? So now you have the answer. It's
Yeah.
a new model, and good luck. And I really love it. So to sell an ERP, it's not easy. You have your own like methodology now. You have the risk free 30 days, but before you get these people who you can convince them to try the software for free 30 days, the marketing or the lead generation stuff, how do you think, because it's not easy, the market is so competitive, there's a lot of partners, we are all selling the same stuff, we are all selling ERP, the same software, how you can like generate qualified leads that you can offer them the 30 days risk free program?
Yep. I think, part of it is every business has to differentiate themselves from their competitors. And it's really easy to just like to look like another one of those guys. And so if you lined up, 20 Business One resellers, you'd be hard pressed to tell them apart from what their
Yeah.
websites describe about them, right? Part of our competitive advantage is this very different way of doing it. So we talk about that. The other thing we do, even on the subscription side, and it's right on our website, so people can see it. Is there are a lot of NetSuite customers that get really low prices on the front side of becoming a customer, huge discounts, and
Yeah.
they sign up for like a 5-year contract. Well, then at the end of 5 years, their subscription price goes up by 45%. We've actually replaced two NetSuite systems because of that. And what
Okay.
we've done for ourselves is we will give customers a 5-year price lock. So
Okay.
we don't know. There's a little bit sort of factored into the price that try to hedge that bet a little bit, but customers like that idea, right? So that there's a 5-year price lock. They don't have to worry about that price moving anytime. We don't do 5-year contracts. We only do 1-year contracts. So that means they have to renew every year. Why do we do that? Because we actually want to be forced to do a good enough job that we don't have people leave us at the end of a year. We want them to renew, and we want the pressure on us, right, to
Yeah.
satisfy that customer. If you get a customer signed up for 5 years, they're unhappy at year one, well, they're here for another 4 anyway. We don't have to try so hard, right? That's what they signed up for. It just changes the relationship again, right, to a more honest relationship. And so I think you have to differentiate yourself to try to, and to be honest, if you want, marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, you have to invest a lot of money in
Mm.
the front side of your funnel, right? Your sales funnel to get those. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
Larger organizations like Vision 33, would have fully staffed marketing departments, 10 to 15 people. They might have and they may have inside salespeople that are just dialing on the phones, right? And they're running multiple marketing campaigns, reaching out to different industries. I used to host for them webinars, right? I'd just be the
Yeah.
host. There would be a special guest and industry people and things like that. And they're doing, 10 of those a year, right? And because they have all these people and the capability to pull these things together and organize them and create all
Yeah.
the collateral that needs to go along with them and all of those things. So it's hard for the small company to compete against that. So I think that the best thing you can do is really talk about what makes us different, and that's got to be front and center, in terms of why we're different, because they can get all the news they want about the product any place, right? So some of that's got to be there, but what really has to be there is what makes us different. Why are we unique? Why is the experience with our company better than the other guys, right? Whoever they are. And it's not just other Business One, right? It's other ERP companies that are selling another product. My personal sort of style, right, if you will, is very personable, right? So I have always seen, I just wrote a blog next week. It probably won't be published for a while, but I was describing how the whole kind of customer service side of the business has changed through the years. But what hasn't changed for me is that I always saw every customer as a personal friend.
Yeah.
Every prospect was my friend. And so that from day one, I wanted the relationship to be as warm and as friendly and as kind as possible and as truthful as possible, right? Salespeople have an interesting way of doing things sometimes where a customer asks them a question and they don't answer it because it's not necessarily good news. So they'll try to avoid it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things they do, right? And I always had this thing my buddy Forrest taught me was there's no good news, there's no bad news, there's just news. And one of the things that I always wanted my prospects, my customers to be able to count on for me was 100% transparency. I was going to just give them the news. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But if you just treat it like news, then you say, okay, now what am I going to do with that? Right? So
Mm.
what does that mean? Right? how do I get around that? How do I make it better? So those are things you can work on together. That's the relationship I wanted, and I always wanted to be helpful, right, to them. When I was first got into a sales role, I took a class, and I'll never forget this statement. The guy who taught it said that if you have a product that will help this person, you have an ethical responsibility to try and sell it to them. If you don't have a product that will help this person, you have an ethical responsibility not to sell it to them. One of the hardest things to do in this industry is to walk away, right? Because we see every opportunity as the next good thing. And sometimes not every opportunity is a good place to go. And don't get bogged down. If you get bogged down as a small business in like this difficult implementation, and maybe it's also a difficult customer that happens,
Yeah.
then so much of your energy and your ability to go after the better ones is eaten up. And so you have to be smart about the customers you take on also, especially in the early years, right? Because you need success, and you might learn a lot in failure, but you can also learn some really good things with success. And so I would say focus on what makes you different, right? When you talk to people, tell them about your business and the people and what's different about it, because many of them are very skeptical about who they're working with. And the more they know about you, the better.
I don't know what to say, but this is a great lesson for me, at least. I'm learning a lot from you, Carl, to be honest. And as you mentioned, regarding how to be truthful, how to be honest, the human side is important in this relationship between you
Very
and the
much.
customer, because it's not a 1 year partnership. It's not a
No.
2 years. In the ERP industry, I believe it's like minimum 10 years. Nobody is buying an ERP solution every day. So uh, your customers are lucky that you'll be their friend and their partner. So uh, let's move to the AI. You can see the AI world, this trend. AI will replace people, AI in the ERP industry. How you can see the AI as a tool that people may use in the ERP industry in the future?
Yeah, I think that phrase is very important to me. I see AI as a tool. It is not an end in and of itself.
Yeah,
People are still going to drive AI. People are going to create and manipulate the algorithms around AI. I have some concerns about that when it comes to, big tech and their ability to be neutral about things. So I don't think I worry about that so much when it comes to kind of the everyday tasks of somebody working in a small business, right? But I do think there's some great benefits that can be brought to the ERP environment with AI, just in terms of automations in particular, intelligent automations, the ability to help me take the temperature of my customers. I see a lot of stuff able to be done with that. So it's going to grow. I know that Acumatica is working on some AI things already. I know SAP Business One has been, and there are some partners entering both of those channels that
yeah,
specialize in it. So we're all going to see it rise more and more and more. And but again, it's one of those things that I don't believe we've actually seen a mature generation of AI things come about just yet. We're still in the really early stages.
yeah,
So it's something like to get ready for. Just like I've always said about ERP, people were concerned about putting in an ERP system because it was going to take jobs away from people. I never saw that happen,
yeah,
right? Never saw that happen. I saw people get repositioned, right, repurposed, but I never saw anybody lose their job because we put in an ERP system. Usually, companies that need an ERP system can't find enough people, right, to hire, because if they're not using one, if they're not automated, they're doing everything manually and they're having a difficult time of it, right, to be able to keep up. So, I don't. I see ERP helping businesses, but I don't see it putting people out of work, right? I don't have those kind of fears, given my experience with technology over the last 25 or 30 years. If anything, it puts more people to work in the field of technology, right, than anything else. So I'm one of those. I've never been a really fast adopter. It's like people who know me in the Business One channel will know that I was a believer, but I was not going to push my customers who have been running on Microsoft SQL for 10 years to migrate to HANA. That path was very difficult. SAP just thought they should redeploy, right, to take advantage of HANA. But it's kind of like, again, this was something you did that you wanted to do, but you didn't really ask your customers. Do you want us to put Business One on a whole new database structure so we can, do faster this and that, but it won't really impact any of the stuff you do day to day. It was, and I sort of see AI a bit like that. It's not necessarily anything that today the vast amount of customers are asking for.
Okay.
It's kind of like, and you're going to have to prove it to them, right? That it's really got value, that it's going to be as revolutionary as some of us believe it can be. And I don't know how fast that's going to happen in reality. Probably faster than I think it will. But real dynamic change where it's a whole new paradigm. Again, I look at life in kind of 10-year segments, and I'm sure that 10 years from now, that's going to be an entirely, amazing thing to look back on, right? And say, here's where it began, and it took it 10 years to get here. Maybe it's 5 years. Maybe it's faster than everything else I've ever seen in my life. But most things have taken a decade to kind of really get there, right?
Yeah.
When they come to the marketplace. If you looked at, even simple technology things like, cell phones, from the time I got my first cell phone that fit in a suitcase to the time I got a cell phone that fits in my pocket was 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So almost anything like that I can point to, the beginnings are, wow, this is great. I just wish that I didn't have to have a backpack to carry it around with. Give me a while, right? Is what the guys in the business are saying. Give me a while, and just you wait and see. Well, I'm happy to wait. I kind of feel like that's where we are with AI, and I will acknowledge that things move faster now than they ever have, right? Some people, I think, what have I heard, that the world's knowledge increases 100% every 5 years or something like that. So maybe it's a 5-year mark, but we're still at the beginning. What's interesting is I've been saying we're still at the beginning for 3 years now. So I'm more convinced than ever that we're at the beginning, right? There's a lot of promise, but I think if you even look at, I've tried to use some of the like Chat GPT type, programs, and you have to type the question you want just the way it wants it, right?
Yeah.
To really give you what you're looking for. And I was in a brainstorming session with a consultant a couple of weeks ago, and we would be trying to wordsmith something, and he would immediately go to Chat GPT and say, show me all the words that are, da, 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 and it's like, quick. It's like, I was thinking to myself, I need to learn how to do that. But I was also amazed with, if you don't put it in just right, you just get crap, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely some growth there, right, in those and but again, when you look at the promise of it and what it can do already, it's like, as these guys get more into it and learn how to train it, right, these systems, and give them more data to assume and absorb, and as they have the ability to do it in real time, just sort of think of Chat GPT being able to read all the newspapers in the world every day,
Yeah.
or absorb all the news stations that are on the air, cable and everything else every day, and be completely up to date on everything that's happening all the time. That would be a feat, right? But that's where I think it's got to go before it's got that sort of, it's living with us every day, and we can't do without it, right? It becomes the tool of choice for a lot of things.
So let's see how things will move. When ChatGPT just started in 2022, I believe. Yeah, something like that. It was amazing, so smart. I was like, oh my God, what is that? When I started asking him about SAP Business One, he was answering not accurate, like 100% accurate. But now, after 2 years, it will be smarter. But if you started using ChatGPT from the very beginning to now, you will feel like there is something wrong. The last model, the 4.0, I don't know. It's stupid, very, very stupid. I should ask him the question multiple times. He write a lot of stuff that I don't need. I tell him, please make it brief in a brief way. So I don't know why. I don't know why this is happening. It's lazy. It's not. Sometimes it's not giving me the answer, and it says like, this is the answer that I have. I don't know what happened. There's something weird with the chat GPT.
The big test that I gave it a couple of years ago, and I should go back and do it again, is I would ask it to write a query for me.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see, write me a query to get the sum of sales by customer daily. It couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It would spit out something that was SQL, right? But you couldn't run it. And it would error. And because I was trying to think from a customer. Wouldn't a customer love to be able to do this? Just to say, hey, I'd like a query that does this, and I can copy and paste, and I'm good to go. So it's kind of like, that's what I mean by there's a lot of promise, but it's going to take a while with a
Yeah,
lot more
yeah,
information stored in order to be able to sort of ask those real time ERP questions and sort of get a correct answer.
yeah,
And that's just one thing, right? Now, I think there are probably many better uses of it currently, but yeah, we're still at the beginning. All right, we're
yeah.
still at the beginning. Yeah.
Let's sit and see what will happen.
Probably a good time to invest, however, right? So if you've got some money hanging around, it's probably a
Yeah,
good time to invest in those businesses because I do eventually think they'll be in a very good position.
I was speaking to someone. He mentioned that the AI is the like the cryptocurrency now. When the
Yeah,
cryptocurrency started, everybody go to invest. So the AI is the same way, I believe. So I have two questions in my bucket. The first one, those are the last, and thank you for your time today. The first one is about the implementation ERP solution. So, what is the common mistakes that you can see people are doing while they are implementing an ERP solution that they should avoid or take care of?
yeah. I mean, some of the things that I've written about and I've talked about is that trying to make the new system do it the way the old one did. And this is really hard when somebody has an old, highly customized system.
Yeah.
My mind tells me, never said this out loud to a customer, if that one was so good, you should have stuck with it. So I think you really have to remind yourself, this is not the old system. I need to adapt to the way the new one does the best I
Mm,
can. And
yeah.
it's really a matter of the new system coming towards you and you coming towards it, somewhere in the middle. But you are going to have to change, right? So if you're not ready to change, you're not ready for a new ERP system because they're not identical to one another. They had the same end result, but the path to get to that result is going to be different. And it has a limited amount of modifications that can be done to it. It's not unlimited in that sense. So I think that's one of them. Another one is they don't put the right people on the job, right? And I'm not talking about the consulting company, I'm talking about internal people. Oftentimes they, like I've been given, an owner's nephew, and it's like, no, you need a whole team. They need to be strategically chosen for their knowledge of the business and their technical capabilities in the job that in the role they fulfill. And my minimum personally is 4, right? Because there's a lot of work to be done that's internal work. And if it's only one person, when the whole company goes live, you're only going to have one person that everybody's going to be asking for help from. That's not enough, right? So I like to see a team of at least 4 people internally at the customer's location to really be in all the meetings, understand what we're doing, help. Because if only one person, if you're relying on them to know the whole company and everybody's processes, I guarantee you they don't. And
Yeah.
they just don't have a full reflection on what everybody does all the time. So you need more voices in the room when these things are being designed and put together. So I talk about the team that's required to make it a successful experience. It has to have involvement and ownership from the uppermost people in the company. Can't have an absent CEO that on go live flies into the room and says, but it doesn't do these 7 things, right? Who wasn't interested until we get to the end to show up and tell us those are his requirements, right? So they've got to be involved up front. And you want their support because you want that person to be the champion of this new system that's going in and to basically tell their employees, we're doing this, I'm doing this, you need to come along with me, right? This is our journey, this is our success, right? We're going to make it work, right? It's really important to have that kind of leadership along the way. And I have this phrase that I picked up from Star Trek that I like to use. In the early credits in a Star Trek roll-up, it always talked about, to boldly go, right? Where no one else has ever gone, blah, blah, blah. And I liked that phrase, boldly go, right? So if you're going to change ERP systems, it takes some courage, right? Because there's a lot of things that can happen, but you have to boldly go, right? It's just like when I get in my car every day, the car does not timidly start. It fires up, right? And that's the way it's got to be with, switching ERP systems or putting one in for the first time. If you are, you just have to jump in, right? And it's get going, right? Just
Yeah.
go boldly, right? That's for sure. Those are some of the reasons that I see things fails because people think it's going to be easier than it is. They don't invest in it enough. They don't put the right people on it. They don't have the right leadership. the consulting companies, all of them have good ones and bad ones, and the the difference for me is a lot of times the customer that you're working with, right, and how they approach it. So there's a lot of coaching, if you will, that needs to go into that experience of working with the business, and encouraging them. If you start getting into meetings and there's only two people involved and they're impacting the lives of 50, that's not enough people, right?
Yeah.
To be sure you've got the information you need. So, um, seen that far too often.
So great advice. And maybe the four people thing is difficult to have like four person in one project. It's a lot of
Well,
resources.
there's a lot of detail work that needs to be done, but there should be kind of regular check-in meetings, right,
Yeah.
where you're reviewing the decisions that have been made and reviewing, how things are working. And I just think that those meetings in particular require more than one person
Yeah.
in them, right? And
Mm.
whether it's different departments or what it may be, but it could be a CEO and a CFO, right? And then somebody who's going to be, there. A lot of companies now have like an ERP administrator, and they may become the primary person, but at least one really strong user of the system I'd like to see in the room for sure.
Yeah. So my last question for you, Carl, is about an advice. We need an advice for all the ERP professionals in this industry in our community. If you will give us an advice, what it will be.
Well, I'll give two pieces of advice. One for the younger ones is who people in college who want to be a consultant, get experience in as many other businesses as you can, right? Whether you go to work for a summer in a warehouse, right, someplace, and learn how to pick orders, right? Learn how they operate in that warehouse. Do data entry in somebody's accounting department someplace, and learn how they do those sorts of things. Get some of that hands on it kind of experience. It'll serve you well. If you're a young person just getting out of college and wanting to be a consultant, because you'll have done some of the stuff that you're going to be faced with all the time. For older consultants or older professionals in the field, and I would say never stop learning.
Okay.
There's always set aside time to learn some more. Always be improving your skills. Don't Probably one of the most important one is figure out a way to have fun with your work, right? If you lose the passion for it, it takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
I think we all need to enjoy what we're doing, and if it becomes too dry, too mundane, too much of a burden, figure out a way to get the joy back, right? Because ERP work can be very taxing, right? And a lot of strain. And although you've used the word, you got to be human, there are things about our work that make that difficult at times. It's really easy to do a lot of what we do kind of in a closet, right? And I had one customer one time talk about a consultant, said, yeah, we don't know what he does, but he kind of goes off over there into the corner and he comes back and he puts something in and it's like magic, right? I never wanted to be a magician. So I loved creating something, and then I liked showing people how I got there, right?
Okay.
Because I wanted them to be able to do it for themselves, right, at some point. And I don't want them to have to rely on me 100%. Right? That's not the relationship I want. And so it was always important to me that I was a teacher also, right, in the process. Watching somebody else learn felt a lot better than me patting my own back, right, for doing a good job. So
Yeah. So your mindset is so beautiful. You think about things in a different way, an honest way, truthful way. Some people wants the customers to rely on them, so they feel like I can do that. You will pay that. Some people will not tell the customer that your legacy system is perfect. Don't move.
yeah,
We don't have something better than that. A lot of people will not say that for sure, and a lot of people will never say the news. If it is bad, they will only say the good news. So I believe that there is only one Carl Lewis. Yeah, and it was an honor. Really, this is an honor for me to do this podcast episode with you, Carl. I really enjoyed my time. Thank you so much, and good luck with the stellar one they are. Those guys are so lucky having you, and also Acumatica. They are so lucky that you are Acumatica now, or you will focus more on Acumatica. Thank you so much, and I hope that we meet again in person soon.
I'm sure we will somewhere down the road. It's really been a pleasure, Khaled. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Carl.